Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Christie.
Hey friends, it's Christy, your credit coach, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode. This one, I'm going to take kind of a hard approach of how hard are you willing to work at improving your credit score? And I ask that because I talk to so many people that start off the conversation saying, hey, I have really bad credit. And I say, okay, well, tell me a little bit about how you ended up where you're at. Give me a snapshot at where you're at in your credit profile. And they'll say, I hear dozens and dozens of different stories, but typically it all winds up with poor choices, bad behavior, a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of the importance of credit. So I honor you today for tuning in so that you can work hard at improving your credit profile. So sometimes we don't realize how much of an impact our credit score has in our financial success. And if you start looking at it over future years, if you start improving your credit score today, you are likely going to save tens of thousands of dollars in interest charges over your lifetime. So I applaud you for listening in today. So most people won't make the efforts to improve their credit until they know how much of an impact their credit score has. So let's start there. Typically, we start off with some credit cards or some student loans, or we got an auto loan and we made our payments as best we can. And we're kind of getting through life and figuring out how to start adulting. And sometimes you hit a bump in the road, you lost your job, some unexpected cost came up, you just made a bad choice, whatever the case is. And now you're late on a payment, or you bought a lemon of a car. So all of your money is going into fixing the car. There's nothing left to pay the car payment. Or you needed some retail therapy because something terrible happened in your life, and the only thing that brought you joy was going out and buying some new things. So wherever you find yourself, if you find yourself in a place where you are wanting to repair some bad choices that are reflecting on your credit report now, you are with good company. So let's tackle some of those things. I can't care more about your credit than you do. So you're likely listening to this because something's happened that has triggered the need for you to have good or better credit. Maybe it's just a choice because you're feeling really lousy about your past decisions and you want to start making better choices moving forward. Or maybe you're ready to buy a home and you realize that you're going to have to repair some of those bad choices or whatever's reported in the past. You know that you need to start remedying that. So here's the thing. If you don't make any changes to your life, you're going to be in the same spot in a year, 2 years, 10 years. For those of you who heard my initial pilot podcast, I'm a mortgage loan officer for the state of Florida, and I get to see literally thousands of credit reports. And I've had consultations with thousands of families. And there's this underlying theme that we just don't truly understand credit. We don't truly understand finance. And as young adults, we didn't necessarily have the very best mentors or examples showing us how to use money. So we kind of got into this survival state and worked a certain way, hoping that it is good enough to sustain us. But there's an actual relationship that you have to money or to credit, whether you know it or not. So it's a really important thing to pause for a moment and really start to dig back to your first awareness with money, with finance, with credit. What were your examples? Was a parent of yours the one that just swiped the card all the time and maybe went out for retail therapy when the going got tough? Or were your parents savers and just never got to, you never got treated for anything, only the bare necessities? Did you hear doom and gloom in your life, or that money is the root of all evil? We all have this story that's been created from our environment and from our teachings growing up. And I think it's really important for you to know what your core story is when it comes to money and to finance, because you are living into those beliefs that you have. And a lot of times it winds up where we're just avoiding our credit, avoiding bad debt or people or companies that we've kind of stuck in the past with payments we didn't make. And now you're coming to that realization that if I'm going to get financing for a home, if I'm going to start fresh and clean with getting credit cards and trying to get my financial home in order, well, I've got to start having a better understanding. So when we sit in this space of not really knowing or not understanding credit and finance and money, and sometimes there's more month left than there is money between now and our next paycheck, it can create a lot of worry and overwhelm and anxiety. And learning some of these tips, my goal is for you to experience freedom and a sense of security. So let's get into it. So, how hard are you willing to work on improving your credit? I think the first thing you need to do is really understand your core story or your beliefs about money and finances, and then let's replace that with a new ideal. Okay? So, money is not the root of all evil. The love of money could be the root of all evil. But I think that not spending time but I think it's important for us to spend time and really get a grasp of what credit and finance means to you. So here's what I'd like for you to do. Once you have an understanding of your belief about money and credit, your core story, was it bad to have? Did you have to save it? Was it flowing to you or repelling against you as far as how you saw the mindset of your family? What I'd like for you to do once you have that is look at your behaviors as you show up now. So you know what's reporting on your credit. And if you don't, go sign up with a credit access through a credit card through your bank. Most banks offer this, or Credit Karma. Now, a side note here about Credit Karma, I'm not dogging this company. I like that they show us 2 out of our 3 credit scores. Keep in mind that that is not your actual credit score. There are dozens of scoring models out there. So it is a reflection of what your score might be. But if you were to apply for something like, say, a mortgage, your credit score is likely going to be at a lower score than what you're seeing on Credit Karma. Credit Karma is a marketing agency. Do not be duped into clicking on one of those credit cards because they suggest it based on your credit profile. So if you log in and you've got a 497 credit score, they're going to say, hey, looks like you could repair your credit and start building forward towards a new credit with having a secured credit card. If you click on that link to start and apply for a new credit card, they get paid. If you have excellent credit and they say, hey, you should have this Venture Miles and these reward program credit cards, make no doubt about it. If you click on that link and apply for that credit card, they're getting paid. They are a marketing agency for these credit card outlets. So just be very cautious of that when you do go to look at your Credit Karma. So look at your profile, look at your credit profile. Don't worry about what it says. I see serious delinquency and not enough time in history and all of these things. Don't worry about those kinds of things. Look at what is actually being reported. So if you've borrowed for student loans, for auto loans, anything like that, is it reflecting your payment showing on time? It's a big chunk of your credit score is your payment history. It makes up about 35% of your credit score. So make sure those payments are being reflected, that they're being paid on time. When it comes to any other trade lines that are showing up, credit cards, I've said this before, I'll say it again. You want your credit card balance to be below 30% of your limit. But what else is being reported? Are there medical collections? I want you to know that the credit reporting bureaus don't really have a great sensory when it comes to being able to determine if it's a medical collection or if it's, say, a utilities or a credit card collection. An open collection is a collection, and it's going to hurt you just as much because it's a collection. Now, the older that collection becomes, the less impact, negative impact it has on your credit score. So if you have a collection that's, say, 2 years older or greater, maybe just maybe don't put too much weight into making that go away. But if you have a new collection, I would reach out to that company as quickly as possible. And just remember, when you call a credit collection company, they are not being paid to be nice, okay? You're probably not going to speak to somebody who's going to be joyful and kind to you on the phone. So just go into it knowing that you're not going to feel warm and tingly about this conversation. But see if you can set up a payment plan. Okay, see if you can make any kind of arrangements to make that collection go away. Now, collections and charge-offs have negative implications on your credit report. A charge off is where a collection attempt has been made. Sometimes it's made through numerous collection agencies. So a collection agency is hired in to collect on behalf of whoever you didn't pay. And that collection agency makes efforts. They're calling you, they're sending you letters, they've put a negative report against your credit history. And if they're not able to collect, a lot of times it gets sold to another collection agency. I've seen it where the same credit card had been sold off to, I don't know, 4 or 5 different collection agencies over the years. And every one of those are showing up as a collection against your credit. So it's really important that if you do have an account going into collection status, you try to make a payment arrangement to them. So that way it doesn't wind up happening where it snowballs into a much bigger deal than what it needed to be. A charge-off means that the collection efforts were null and void. They weren't able to obtain payment or a payment agreement back from you. And now essentially that original creditor has written off your debt as bad debt. So a charge-off should reflect a zero balance, and it's essentially closed, but you might still have open collections showing up over here. But a charge-off just means, hey, they've given their best efforts to try to collect from you, and they've written off that debt. So if many years later, you try to go and pay off and make it right with that company, if they have a charge off, there's a really good chance they just don't have access to that information anymore, and they can't make it be fulfilled because they've written it off. So it's just kind of a closed negative, if you will. So if your credit profile shows auto repossessions, collections, and charge offs, what I want to tell you is the older that they get, the less negative impact it will have on your credit report. But it's really important to start new positive reporting moving forward that will kind of help offset that negative past history. Sometimes we're just not in a financial position to be able to repay a repossession or a collection. And let's pause on repossessions for just a moment. I've had people say, well, it was a voluntary repossession. Quite frankly, a voluntary or involuntary repossession doesn't reflect, it is reported that way on your credit report, but it doesn't have any difference in an impact on your credit report if it's voluntary or involuntary. It's still being reported as a repossession. Now, when you go to obtain permission or approval for financing, perhaps the decision maker or the underwriter for financing might say, oh, well, it was voluntary versus involuntary, perhaps something happened. And you can usually write a story explaining it, but it doesn't necessarily change the fact that you still had a repossession. And it certainly won't have that come off your credit. So that's going to be on your credit for at least that 7 years. Now, what I see happen is when there is a repossession, there are collection agencies now set up to come and collect that difference from what the creditor sold your car for, typically at an auction, and at a really nice price for that buyer. So let's say you owed $15,000 and they sold it off for 10. They're going to have a collection against you for that difference. And that collection, if it's large enough, could turn into a judgment. They might turn that into a public judgment, which has an even bigger negative impact on your credit history. So a lot of times we're not in the financial position to be able to make repayment terms for that $5,000. If you had the money, you probably wouldn't have wound up in a repossession in the first place. So just know that that is possible. Hopefully it'll just kind of go away silently off into the sunset. And the older it is, the less impact it will have. If you have a collection, a small collection, let's use an example with a cell phone carrier. Maybe you left one company to go to another and they charged you for the balance that you owed on the phone, the new phone that you got. Or you moved from one apartment to another and you had to go to a different utilities company, but you didn't pay that last bill with a prior utilities company. I see cable wind up often on a credit report that shows up as a collection because we move and we move on, and sometimes we didn't replace that box that had to get, or excuse me, return that box that had to go back to Bright House or Comcast or whoever your cable provider was. And now, out of the blue, you have a $250 collection against you. And keep this in mind, sometimes collections accrue interest and fees against that original balance. So what would have wound up being just a small little amount or a couple $100 can turn into hundreds more because of fees and late penalties that are placed against it. So I want to make sure that you have this awareness of the people who have really extended you credit, okay? Even though cell phone bills and cable bills and utilities aren't reported on your credit report unless you self-report it, they don't show up unless it becomes a collection. So if you're moving, if you're changing companies, have that conversation with the utility company, with the cell phone company, with whomever it is, and just make sure that there is a zero balance left at the end there, that that's taken care of, because you will have a rude awakening when you go and apply for a loan to get an auto loan or a mortgage, and all of a sudden there's a credit, or excuse me, a collection that has shown up and dropped your score 30, 50, 70 points. It can hurt. So how hard are you willing to work at improving your credit? Couple things I want to say. If you owe some people recently, they've become recent collections, get out of that, pay it off, make arrangements, do what you can to make it right. It's not fair or just to stick somebody with something that is truly owed to you. Now, the flip side is I've seen erroneous charges go against somebody's collection on their credit report, and they're wrong. Question them, dispute it, but don't just dispute it with the credit card companies. Go to that company and say, I brought back that cable box. I paid off that cell phone. Show me in writing the terms where this cost or this collection that you have against me is actually mine. If they can prove it to you, just make it right, make payments, make that go away. If it is erroneous, you can fight that. So get that off of your credit report and don't wait, because it could become even more costly to wait. So just make that commitment to keeping aware of what is coming on your credit. What I love about Credit Karma, going back to them, is anytime a credit inquiry is made on my credit, I get notification. Anytime a new anything gets added to my credit, I get a notification. So if you were to get a new auto loan or open up a new credit card, it shows that for you. So it's not an actual credit monitoring system that protects you from, say, identity theft, but it does give you a really great window into knowing if there's something new that has shown up on your credit. So let's say your credit score is being hurt right now because your credit cards are maxed out. Here's what I'm going to say about that. Look around your home. Are there things that you could sell? Something you haven't been using in a really long time. A friend of mine just sold a keyboard that he hasn't touched in 10 years, and he put it on Facebook Marketplace and got $200 for it. So anything around you that's just kind of in the way and not bringing joy and improvement to your life, maybe post it online, sell it to somebody, and use that money to pay down the balance of your credit card. If you're really serious about this, go get a little part-time job. I worked at a jewelry store over the weekends for a couple of years when I was working towards my down payment to buy my home. I didn't want to work 7 days a week, but it was a choice I made to help me accomplish a really important milestone in my life. And I knew every single weekend when I was going into that jewelry store to go stand in high heels for 8 hours in a mall environment, that it was temporary and it was helping me to achieve my goals. So look at some things where you can cut. Can you cut your cable bill Can you reduce your internet usage? Can you look at a prepaid cell phone bill as opposed to one that's in a contract? How can you cut some money someplace? If you're not bringing your lunches to your workplace and you're going out and you're spending $10, $15 every day on lunch, consider packing your lunch and being prepared in advance and saving your money that way. But your goal is to get those credit card balances down to at least below 30%. And once you get there, you're going to see your credit scores soar. So, what's important about having a high credit score versus a low credit score? Did you know that employers pull credit? That when you open up a bank account, they pull credit? Do you know that it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars more when you go and get large financing, say something for a home, if you have a 650 credit score versus a 750 credit score? Because your interest rate has a direct correlation when you borrow money to your credit score. The lower the credit score, the higher risk you appear to creditors. So we want to get that score up as high as possible. And just remember, your credit report is simply a snapshot in time. It's a picture of your ability to borrow money and pay it back on time. And that's it. Let's not overcomplicate it. Okay. So if you're willing to work very hard at improving your credit, couple of tips you can do: get a part-time job, look at where you can cut some money, and where you cut that money, put that extra amount against your credit card balances. If you're getting a tax refund this year, why don't you slam that money down against those high interest credit cards? If there's a recent collection, call that collection agency and see if you can make a payment arrangement. Keep from getting any extra inquiries on your credit. So in other words, don't apply for new credit. Having 10 store credit cards simply won't help you in your overall financial picture. It's really important to have at least one credit card and at least one installment loan to have a nice mix of credit. So going out and opening a bunch of new credit cards will probably have more of a negative impact because of all of those new inquiries, and you don't necessarily have a time frame yet of a relationship with those new credit cards. So it's just new credit. There's nothing really helping you yet. So if you have bad past reporting for your choices or situations that you found yourself in, see if you can remedy it. If it's old enough, a lot older than a couple years, kind of leave it alone. But we need something moving forward to help that out. And that's going to take a little extra effort from you to make that happen. But I'm telling you, that extra effort, that extra help will get you to your goals. I've said this in another podcast. I'll share it with you today. Becoming an authorized user on somebody's credit card that has a high limit, a low balance, and a long-standing history with a credit card can also have a really positive impact on your score. But remember, this is really about your mindset and your relationship and your belief system with money and with credit. So we need to replace what we think we know about money with the new information we're learning. So thank you for being part of this with me. I'm glad to be part of your journey on your quest to get the very best credit, to have an understanding of credit, and to have a new relationship with credit. So until next time, talk to you soon.
Subscribe now and share with a friend to stay in the loop for new credit content and insider tips to maximize your credit knowledge. And follow Credit Christie on Instagram.